Montana Territory, 1875. The wind howled across the plains like a wounded animal, bending the tall grass in waves that mimicked the distant mountains. Dust clouds swirled beneath a merciless sun that beat down on the small township of Silver Creek. It was the kind of place where folks came to disappear, to bury secrets beneath hard work and harder living. 24-year-old Travis Keller believed one thing with absolute certainty: a man survived the frontier alone. Partnerships led to betrayal, and love was a luxury that got people killed. He'd seen it happen too many times, good men distracted by tender feelings, only to end up face down in the dirt with a bullet in their back. The West demanded vigilance, and Travis had learned that lesson through blood and loss. As he guided his chestnut mare through Silver Creek's muddy Main Street, Travis kept his posture rigid in the saddle, eyes constantly scanning for threats. His lean, muscular frame was the result of years of breaking horses and driving cattle across unforgiving terrain. Though young, his face already carried the weathered look of a man who'd seen too much, though beneath the light stubble and sun-bronzed skin remained features that the local girls found all too appealing. What Travis wanted was simple: to build his small ranch into something that could sustain him, to add to his modest herd, and to be left the hell alone. What he couldn't admit even to himself was the emptiness that consumed him when night fell and there was nothing but the sound of the wind and his own breathing for company. At the opposite end of town stood Lancaster's General Store, where 19-year-old Katherine Lancaster sorted inventory with practiced efficiency. Her honey-blonde hair was pulled back in a practical bun, though rebellious strands had escaped to frame a face of uncommon beauty. Her blue calico dress was modest and well-worn, but she carried herself with quiet dignity despite circumstances that would have broken a weaker spirit. "Katherine, those flour sacks need to be stacked by the back wall," barked Josiah Lancaster, the store owner who had reluctantly taken her in 3 years prior. "And mind you don't tear them like last time." "Yes, Uncle Josiah," Katherine replied softly, though her clear green eyes flashed with momentary defiance. She believed she was damaged goods, abandoned by her father after her mother's death, passed from relative to relative until landing with her mother's brother, who made it clear her presence was tolerated only because she worked without wages. Katherine had constructed walls around her heart as solid as any frontier fort. She told herself she needed nothing and no one, that attachments only led to abandonment, and that dreams beyond Silver Creek were foolish fantasies. What she wanted was enough money to escape west to California, where she imagined she might start fresh where no one knew her shame. What she needed, though she'd never admit it, was to belong somewhere, to someone who saw her true worth. That spring afternoon, as dust devils danced down Silver Creek's Main Street, fate intervened with the violence that typified the untamed West. Travis was tying his horse outside the telegraph office when the first gunshot cracked the air. 3 riders had stormed into town, firing recklessly as they headed toward the bank. People scattered like quail, diving for cover as the outlaws whooped and hollered. "Everyone stay down," Travis shouted, ducking behind a water trough as bullets splintered the wood around him. Inside Lancaster's General Store, Katherine froze at the sound of gunfire. Uncle Josiah had already bolted the door and was crouching behind the counter, clutching his shotgun. "Get down, girl," he hissed. But Katherine stood transfixed by the window, watching as one of the outlaws broke away from his companions and rode straight toward the store. Her heart hammered against her ribs as she realized his intent. The store's strongbox contained the week's earnings. "Uncle Josiah, he's coming here," she warned, but when she turned, her uncle was already fleeing through the back door, abandoning her to save himself. The outlaw crashed through the front door, shattering glass and wood. Katherine backed away as he dismounted, his gun trained on her chest. "Where's the money, pretty girl?" he growled, advancing toward her. Katherine's gaze darted to the shotgun her uncle had left behind. In one fluid motion, she lunged for it, but the outlaw was faster. He grabbed her arm, twisting until she cried out in pain. Outside, Travis heard the scream. Every instinct told him to stay hidden, to let the law handle it, but Silver Creek's sheriff was 3 days out on the trail of cattle rustlers. Against his better judgment, Travis drew his Colt and moved toward the store, keeping low. When he saw through the broken window what was happening, something primitive and protective surged through him. The outlaw had Katherine pinned against the counter, his filthy hands pawing at her as she struggled. Travis didn't hesitate. He took aim through the window and fired. The outlaw jerked backward, releasing Katherine as blood bloomed across his shoulder. Before the man could recover, Travis was through the door, delivering a crushing blow to the outlaw's jaw with the butt of his pistol. The outlaw crumpled to the floor as gunfire continued outside. Travis turned to Katherine, who stood trembling but defiant, her eyes wide with shock. "Can you tie him?" Travis asked, offering her some rope from a nearby shelf. Katherine nodded, her hands steadier than her racing heart as she bound the unconscious man. "Stay here," Travis ordered, moving back toward the door. "No," Katherine said firmly, grabbing the shotgun from the floor. "I can shoot." Something in her determined expression made Travis pause. Against everything he believed about keeping civilians, especially women, out of danger, he nodded briefly. Together they moved to the doorway. The remaining outlaws were engaged in a shootout with several townsfolk who had taken up arms. Travis and Katherine's combined fire from an unexpected direction turned the tide, forcing the outlaws to retreat empty-handed, dragging their wounded companion with them. As the dust settled, Travis turned to Katherine, seeing her properly for the first time. Her face was smudged with dirt, her dress torn at the shoulder, but her eyes were alive with a fire that struck him to his core. "You handle that shotgun like you were born to it," he remarked, holstering his pistol. "My father taught me before." Katherine's voice trailed off, her expression shuddering. "Thank you for your assistance, Mr. Keller." "Travis Keller. Katherine Lancaster." An awkward silence fell between them, charged with something neither could name. It was broken when townsfolk began to emerge from hiding, exclaiming over the attempted robbery. When Josiah Lancaster reappeared, claiming he'd gone for help, Travis noticed Katherine's bitter smile. The way her uncle avoided her eyes told Travis everything he needed to know about the man's character. "You're bleeding," Katherine said suddenly, pointing to Travis's arm where a bullet had grazed him. "It's nothing," he dismissed, though he winced when she touched the wound. "Let me tend to that," she insisted. "It's the least I can do." Against his better judgment, Travis allowed her to lead him to the back room of the store, where she cleaned and bandaged his arm with gentle efficiency. "Where did you learn to do this?" he asked, watching her skilled movements. "When you've been passed around as much as I have, you pick things up," she replied tersely. Travis wanted to ask more but held his tongue. This woman was not his concern. Once his arm was bandaged, he'd thank her properly and be on his way. There was no place in his life for entanglements, especially with a green-eyed woman whose touch sent unwelcome warmth through his chest. But as fate would have it, their paths were destined to cross again far sooner than either expected. 2 days later, Travis was mending fences on the far edge of his modest property when he spotted a figure trudging along the road that led past his land. Even at a distance, he recognized Katherine's honey-blonde hair, now loose around her shoulders. She carried a small valise and walked with determined strides despite obvious exhaustion. Travis told himself to mind his own business. Whatever trouble the Lancaster girl was in, it wasn't his concern, but when she stumbled and nearly fell, he found himself swinging onto his horse before he'd made a conscious decision. "Miss Lancaster," he called, riding up alongside her. "You're a long way from town." Katherine looked up, surprised and wary. Her face was pale except for a darkening bruise on her cheekbone. "Mr. Keller," she acknowledged stiffly, "I'm just passing through." Travis's eyes narrowed at the bruise. "Who did that to you?" "It doesn't matter, I'm leaving Silver Creek." "And going where exactly?" Katherine lifted her chin. "West, I hear there's work in the mining towns." Travis almost laughed, but the determination in her eyes stopped him. "Do you have any idea what kind of work awaits a young woman alone in those places?" "I can take care of myself," she insisted, though her voice wavered slightly. "Like you're taking care of yourself now. Walking 20 miles through cougar territory with nothing but that little bag." Katherine's eyes flashed. "I don't recall asking for your opinion, Mr. Keller." Travis sighed, looking up at the darkening sky. A spring storm was brewing, and night would fall soon. Against every instinct of self-preservation, he made an offer he knew he'd regret. "My place is just over that rise. You can stay in the Linta tonight. Tomorrow, if you still want to get yourself killed heading to the mining towns, I won't stop you." Katherine hesitated, clearly weighing her pride against practical concerns. "I don't need charity," she finally said. "Good, because I'm not offering any. You can earn your keep by cooking supper. I'm tired of my own beans." A reluctant smile tugged at the corner of her mouth. "I suppose that's fair." Travis reached down and took her valise, then offered his hand to help her mount behind him. Her touch was light but warm as she settled on the horse behind him, maintaining a proper distance. The ride to his cabin was silent, but Travis was acutely aware of Katherine's presence, the faint scent of lavender that somehow clung to her despite her travels, and the way she straightened her spine when his small homestead came into view. The cabin was modest but solid, a testament to Travis's skill with his hands. A small corral held 3 horses besides his mare, and a lean-to addition provided storage and, for tonight, shelter for his unexpected guest. "It's not much," he said gruffly as they dismounted. Katherine surveyed the property with undisguised interest. "You built this yourself." Travis nodded, unexpectedly pleased by her perception. "It's well made," she commented. "Solid foundation." Inside, the cabin was spartanly furnished but meticulously clean. Katherine set about preparing a meal from Travis's limited stores while he tended to his horses. By the time he returned, she had managed to transform his simple provisions into a surprisingly flavorful stew. As they ate by lamplight, Travis found himself studying Katherine's face. The bruise stood out starkly against her fair skin. "Your uncle?" he finally asked, nodding toward her injury. Katherine's spoon paused halfway to her mouth. For a moment, he thought she wouldn't answer. "He didn't appreciate that I stood my ground during the robbery while he ran," she admitted quietly. "Said I made him look bad in front of the town. Then he accused me of making eyes at you when you came to the store." Her bitter laugh held no humor, as if I'd have time for such nonsense. Travis felt a surge of anger toward Josiah Lancaster. "So you left." "I'd been saving for it anyway," she said with a shrug that didn't quite hide her hurt. "This just moved up my timeline." "And your father?" Travis asked carefully, remembering her earlier comment. Katherine's expression hardened. "Gave me up when I was 16 after my mother died. Said he couldn't manage a daughter on his own. Last I heard, he'd remarried and started a new family somewhere in Colorado." She stirred her stew with unnecessary vigor. "I don't need him or anyone else." Travis recognized the defense mechanism all too well. It mirrored his own. "Family can be overrated," he agreed, thinking of his own parents, both lost to a fever that had swept through their settlement when he was 17. "What about you?" Katherine asked. "You're awfully young to be out here alone." Travis considered deflecting but found himself answering honestly. "My folks died 7 years back. I worked ranch jobs until I saved enough for this land. Been building it up bit by bit." "No wife?" Katherine asked, then immediately flushed. "I'm sorry, that's not my business." "No wife," Travis confirmed. "The frontier's no place for softness. People who get attached end up getting hurt when the land or the elements or outlaws take what they love." Katherine studied him thoughtfully. "That sounds awfully lonely, Mr. Keller." "Travis," he corrected automatically. "And lonely is safer than heartbroken." "Is it?" she challenged quietly. Travis had no answer that didn't feel like a lie, so he changed the subject. "Storm's coming in. You should get some rest if you're determined to leave at first light." Katherine seemed about to say more but nodded instead. Travis showed her to the lean-to, which he'd hastily prepared with clean blankets on a straw pallet. It wasn't much, but it was dry and secure. "Thank you," she said, standing in the doorway between the main cabin and her temporary quarters, "for everything." Travis nodded awkwardly, suddenly aware of how small the cabin felt with her presence filling it. "Good night, Miss Lancaster." "Katherine," she corrected with the ghost of a smile, "and good night, Travis." He lay awake long after she'd retired, listening to the storm roll in and wondering why the sound of his name on her lips had sent such warmth through him. By morning, he told himself she'd be gone and things would return to normal. He would focus on his ranch, on survival, on the solitary life he'd chosen. But when morning came, everything changed. Travis woke to the smell of coffee and the sound of movement in his cabin. For a disorienting moment, he thought he'd dreamed Katherine's arrival. Then he saw her standing at his small stove, her hair neatly braided, wearing the same blue calico dress but somehow looking fresher than she had the previous day. "I hope you don't mind," she said, nodding toward the coffee pot. "I thought you might appreciate a hot drink before I set out." Travis sat up, running a hand through his tousled dark hair. "Obliged," he managed, discomfited by the domesticity of the scene. Outside, the aftermath of the storm was evident in puddles that dotted the yard and dark, sodden earth that stretched toward the horizon. "Roads will be mud slicks," Travis observed as he accepted a cup of coffee. "Might want to wait another day." Catherine's expression suggested she saw through his practical reasoning to the unexpected concern beneath it. "Perhaps you're right," she conceded, "though I wouldn't want to impose." "You cook like that stew last night, it's hardly an imposition," Travis said before he could stop himself. A genuine smile brightened Catherine's face, transforming her features from merely pretty to strikingly beautiful. Something tightened in Travis's chest at the sight. "Then I'll earn another night's lodging," she agreed. That day established a pattern that would continue far longer than either anticipated. Travis worked his land while Katherine tended to domestic tasks she clearly found familiar. By silent agreement, they avoided personal topics, speaking instead of practical matters, the condition of the garden patch, the temperament of the horses, the likelihood of rain. When evening came, they shared another meal, this one even better than the last as Katherine had worked minor miracles with Travis's garden greens and some preserved venison. "You never said why you're headed to the mining towns," Travis said as they sat by the fire after supper. Katherine poked at the embers with a stick. "I have an acquaintance who wrote that there's need for teachers in some of the more established camps. Families are moving in as the strikes prove profitable." Travis raised his eyebrows in surprise. "You're a teacher." "I was training to be before my mother died," Katherine admitted. "I've kept up my studies when I could, borrowing books from the preacher's wife." "That's a far sight better than what I imagined," Travis said with relief. "And what did you imagine, Mr. Keller?" Katherine asked with a hint of challenge. Travis had the grace to look embarrassed. The only women who typically head to mining camps alone are, well. "I'm well aware of what you thought," Katherine cut in. "Rest assured, while I may be desperate, I'm not that desperate." Her voice carried a steel that made Travis revise his estimation of her yet again. "I meant no offense," he said quietly. "It speaks well of you aiming to teach." Catherine's expression softened slightly. "Children deserve education, even on the frontier, perhaps especially here, where books and learning can open worlds beyond these harsh landscapes." Travis watched the firelight play across her face, highlighting the intelligence in her eyes. "You'd make a fine teacher," he said honestly. "Thank you," she replied, clearly surprised by the compliment. The next morning the roads were still too muddy for safe travel, a circumstance that brought relief Travis refused to acknowledge. The day after brought heavy rain, and the day after that, Katherine discovered a persistent cough that concerned them both in a region where simple illnesses could turn deadly without proper care. A week passed, then another. Catherine's cough improved, but neither mentioned her departure. Instead, they fell into an unexpected rhythm of shared work and quiet companionship that should have alarmed Travis, but instead brought a peace he'd never known. On her 10th day at the cabin, Travis returned from mending fences to find Katherine standing in the yard, face tilted up to catch the sun's warmth, eyes closed in simple pleasure. Something about the sight, her unguarded expression, the way the sunlight gilded her hair, the strength and grace evident in her posture, struck him with the force of a physical blow. He must have made a sound, for her eyes opened and met his. Something electric passed between them, an acknowledgement of the undercurrent that had been building since that first day in the general store. "Travis," she said softly, his name a question and statement all at once. He should have turned away, should have reminded her and himself that she was leaving, that attachments were dangerous, that the frontier destroyed soft things. Instead, he took a step toward her, then another. "You should have left days ago," he said, his voice rougher than intended. "Yes," she agreed, not moving away as he came closer. "I should have." "Why didn't you?" Travis asked, close enough now to see the flecks of gold in her green eyes. Catherine's gaze was steady, but her voice trembled slightly. "I think you know." Travis's heart hammered against his ribs. All his careful rules, his protective isolation, seemed to crumble beneath the weight of her gaze. He reached out slowly, giving her time to step back, and touched the curve of her cheek with calloused fingers. "This is unwise," he murmured, even as he leaned closer. "Completely," Katherine agreed, tilting her face up to his. Their first kiss was hesitant, a question asked and answered in the gentle press of lips. Their second was a revelation, deepening with a hunger that surprised them both. When they finally broke apart, Travis rested his forehead against hers, breathing uneven. "I don't know what this is," he admitted. "I never planned." "Nor I," Katherine interrupted softly, "but perhaps some things can't be planned." That night they sat closer by the fire, talking more openly than before. Katherine spoke of her childhood in Kansas, of her mother's illness and her father's gradual withdrawal even before her death. Travis told her of his parents, good people who had taught him to work hard and stand by his word, and of the loneliness that had followed their passing. "I convinced myself I preferred solitude," Travis said, watching the flames dance, "that it was safer." Katherine's hand found his, her fingers intertwining with his larger ones. "I told myself the same. That if I never depended on anyone, I could never be abandoned again." Travis squeezed her hand gently, "And now I'm terrified," she admitted with a small laugh. "But I'm here all the same." They agreed to take things slowly, to give whatever was growing between them time to develop naturally. Katherine would stay on, helping with the ranch in exchange for room and board while they learned each other's ways. Spring deepened into summer, and with it, their connection grew. Travis found himself smiling more, laughing at Katherine's dry observations and clever wit. She blossomed under his quiet admiration, standing taller, speaking more confidently, revealing the spirited woman who had been hiding beneath years of caution. Together they expanded the garden, Katherine applying knowledge from books she borrowed from town to improve the yield. Travis taught her to ride properly and was impressed by her natural seat and fearlessness. She helped him break a particularly stubborn colt, her patience complementing his firmer approach. By midsummer, Katherine had transformed the cabin with small touches, curtains made from feed sacks, wildflowers in tin cans, a braided rug beside the bed they still did not share. Travis found himself hurrying to complete his chores each day, eager to return to her company, to her smile that now came so readily, to the way she said his name like it was something precious. Their kisses grew more frequent, more heated, but both held back from crossing the final boundary that propriety dictated should wait for marriage. Neither spoke of such permanence, though Travis found himself thinking of it in quiet moments, imagining Katherine as his wife, the mother of children with her green eyes and determined spirit. In town, where they now ventured together for supplies, they drew curious looks and gossip. Travis glared down anyone who dared make an insinuation about Katherine's virtue, while she held her head high, ignoring whispers with a dignity that impressed even the most judgmental matrons. It was during one such trip to town in late July that the past Katherine had been outrunning finally caught up with her. They were loading supplies into their wagon when a deep voice called out from across the street, "Katherine. Katherine Lancaster, is that you?" Travis turned to see a tall, gray-haired man approaching, his expensive clothes and confident bearing marking him as someone of means. Beside him, Katherine had gone rigid, her face draining of color. "Father," she whispered, the word falling like a stone between them. Edward Lancaster strode toward them, his expression a mixture of disbelief and something that might have been relief. "My God, girl, I've been looking everywhere for you." Travis instinctively moved closer to Katherine, noting how she trembled despite the summer heat. "Mr. Lancaster," he said formally, extending his hand. "Travis Keller. I'm a friend of your daughter's." Edward Lancaster barely spared Travis a glance as he shook his hand perfunctorily, his attention fixed on Katherine. "When Josiah wrote that you'd run off, I feared the worst." "Did you?" Katherine asked, her voice brittle. "That seems unlikely, considering you haven't bothered to check on my welfare in 3 years." Lancaster's expression tightened. "I provided for you, I sent Josiah money for your upkeep." Katherine's laugh held no humor. "Is that what he told you? Interesting, considering I worked in his store from dawn till dusk without wages and slept in an unheated storeroom." A flicker of uncertainty crossed Lancaster's face. "I'm sure you're exaggerating." She's not, Travis interjected firmly. Your brother-in-law is known in these parts for his meanness, and he laid hands on her before she left. Lancaster had the grace to look uncomfortable. I didn't know, he said, then squared his shoulders. But that's all the more reason you should come with me now, Katherine. My wife and I have established a comfortable home in Denver. You'll want for nothing. Katherine's spine straightened. I want for nothing now. Don't be ridiculous, Lancaster scoffed. Living in some dirt farmer's cabin, this is no life for my daughter. Travis bristled at the insult but held his tongue, recognizing this was Katherine's battle to fight. You gave up any right to determine what life is suitable for me when you abandoned me after Mother died, Katherine said clearly, her voice carrying enough that several townspeople turned to watch the confrontation. You cast me aside when I became inconvenient, and now you appear expecting me to fall gratefully at your feet. Lancaster's face flushed with anger or shame, perhaps both. I did what I thought best at the time. I wasn't equipped to raise a young woman alone. And yet Mr. Keller manages my company quite well, Katherine replied coolly. Perhaps you simply weren't willing to try. The older man's eyes narrowed as he looked between them, finally registering their closeness. So that's how it is, he said coldly. You've fallen in with this, rancher. Do you have any idea what people will say? I really don't care, Katherine replied, though Travis could see the hurt beneath her defiance. Lancaster's expression hardened. You're making a mistake, Katherine, a terrible mistake. This man can't give you the life you deserve, the education you always wanted. Katherine is welcome to pursue whatever she wishes, Travis interrupted, his patience finally snapping. Unlike you, I don't see her as a burden but as a blessing. Lancaster's hand moved to his coat pocket, withdrawing a folded document. I've brought papers, he said, ignoring Travis. Transferring a portion of my holdings to your name. $20,000, Katherine, enough to establish yourself properly, to travel, to study, all the things you used to dream about. For the first time, Katherine's resolve seemed to waver. Travis felt a cold knot form in his stomach. He had nothing to offer that could compete with such a sum. It was more than his entire ranch was worth. Think carefully, Lancaster pressed. Are you really willing to throw away your future for this? He gestured dismissively at Travis, and by extension, the life they'd begun to build together. Katherine looked at the papers, then at Travis, her expression torn. He wanted to speak, to tell her he would understand if she chose the security and opportunities her father offered, but the words stuck in his throat. The thought of losing her was a physical ache, but he wouldn't hold her back from a better life. Mr. Lancaster, Katherine finally said, her voice steady once more, I appreciate your belated concern for my welfare. But I've learned something important in the past few months. She moved to stand beside Travis, her hand finding his. True wealth isn't measured in dollars but in being valued for who you are. Lancaster's expression darkened. You're making a terrible mistake, he repeated. When this infatuation fades and you're trapped in a life of endless toil with no escape, you'll remember this moment with regret. The only thing I'd regret is abandoning someone who stood by me when I needed support most, Katherine replied. Something you might want to reflect upon. Lancaster crumpled the papers in his fist. Then we have nothing more to discuss. Don't come crying to me when you realize what you've thrown away. He turned abruptly and strode back toward the hotel, his rigid back betraying his anger. Katherine stood perfectly still until he disappeared from sight. Only then did she release a shuddering breath, her composure finally cracking as tears filled her eyes. Travis wrapped his arm around her shoulders, guiding her quickly to the wagon and away from prying eyes. Once they were on the road heading home, he finally found his voice. Katherine, are you certain what your father offered was too little too late, she interrupted, wiping her eyes, and came with invisible strings attached. He wanted to remake me into someone who would fit his new life, his new wife's expectations. But the money, your dreams of teaching, of travel. Katherine turned to look at him, her tear-stained face resolute. Dreams change, Travis. I've found something on your ranch that no amount of money could buy. And what's that? He asked hoarsely. Her smile was watery but real, a place where I'm valued for my strength, not despite it. Where I'm seen clearly and loved anyway. She paused, vulnerability crossing her features. At least I hope I am. Travis pulled the wagon to a halt in the middle of the road, turning to face her fully. Katherine Lancaster, I've been falling in love with you since the moment you stood your ground with that shotgun in the general store. I just didn't have the sense to recognize it. Catherine's eyes widened. You love me. More than makes any kind of sense, Travis admitted with a helpless laugh. I built my life around keeping people at arm's length, and then you walked in and upended everything. I love you too, Katherine whispered, as if testing the words she'd never expected to say. I love you, Travis Keller, with your stubborn independence and your gentle hands and the way you look at me like I'm something precious. Travis cupped her face in his hands, marveling at the miracle of her. You are precious. And if you'll have me, I'd like to make you my wife. Catherine's smile bloomed like a desert flower after rain. I thought you'd never ask. They were married 2 weeks later by the circuit preacher, a simple ceremony attended by neighbors who had gradually warmed to the couple. Travis wore his only good shirt, and Katherine a new dress of soft blue cotton that matched her eyes. Their vows were traditional but spoken with a fervor that brought tears to the eyes of even the most stoic ranchers present. That night, as husband and wife, they discovered each other in ways they had only imagined, their passion tempered by tenderness, their hunger by reverence. Afterward, lying in each other's arms, Travis marveled at how completely his life had transformed in just a few short months. What are you thinking? Katherine murmured, her head pillowed on his chest. That I was a fool to think safety meant solitude, Travis admitted, stroking her hair. That every hardship I've faced led me to you, and I'd endure it all again willingly. Katherine pressed a kiss to his heart. My father was wrong about you, about us. This isn't a life of endless toil with no escape, it's freedom. Travis tightened his arms around her. We'll work hard, but we'll do it together. And I promise you, Katherine, you'll have your chance to teach. We'll build a schoolhouse right here on our land if we have to. Katherine laughed softly. I'd like that, though I think I'll have my hands full teaching our own children first. The thought of Katherine round with his child, of little ones with her spirit and intelligence running across their land, filled Travis with a joy he'd never imagined possible. As summer turned to autumn, the ranch prospered under their combined efforts. Travis added to their herd through careful trading, while Katherine's garden produced a bounty that allowed them to put away stores for winter. They expanded the cabin, adding a proper bedroom and a small parlor where Katherine established a modest library. Word spread about Katherine's education, and soon neighboring families began to bring their children once a week for lessons in reading and arithmetic. Travis built simple desks that could be stored against the wall when not in use, and Katherine glowed with purpose as she guided young minds. In December, Katherine confirmed what Travis had begun to suspect: they would welcome a child in early summer. The news filled Travis with equal parts terror and elation, emotions Katherine confessed to sharing. We'll figure it out together, she assured him as they lay in bed, his hand resting protectively over her still flat stomach. Like everything else. Late spring brought news from town. Edward Lancaster had returned, asking after his daughter. Despite initial reluctance, Katherine agreed to see him when Travis promised to remain by her side. Her father arrived at their ranch looking older and somehow diminished, his fine clothes at odds with the simple functionality of their home. But his expression when he saw Katherine, now visibly carrying their child, held genuine remorse. You look well, he said awkwardly after Travis had shown him in, happy. I am, Katherine replied simply. Lancaster cleared his throat. I owe you an apology, Katherine, many apologies in fact. I've had time to reflect on my failings as a father. Katherine said nothing, waiting. When your mother died, I was lost, Lancaster continued. I told myself you'd be better off with family who knew how to raise a young woman, but the truth is, I was selfish. I couldn't bear to see your mother's eyes looking back at me from your face. He paused, visibly struggling. It was wrong, and I've regretted it every day since. Yet you waited 3 years to come looking for me, Katherine observed, her voice steady but not unkind. Pride, Lancaster admitted. And fear that you'd reject me as you had every right to do. When Josiah wrote that you'd run off, I was terrified something had happened to you. I've been searching for months. He reached into his coat, producing not money this time but a small wooden box. These were your mother's, her letters, some jewelry, a few keepsakes I selfishly kept when I should have given them to you long ago. Catherine took the box with trembling hands, opening it to reveal the treasures within, tangible connections to the mother she'd lost. A tear slipped down her cheek as she lifted a simple gold locket. I remember this, she whispered. She wore it every day. Lancaster nodded, his own eyes suspiciously bright. She would want you to have it. And she would be proud of the woman you've become, Catherine, as I am, though I've no right to claim any credit. He turned to Travis then, extending his hand. Mr. Keller, I misjudged you and I apologize. It's clear you cherish my daughter as she deserves. Travis accepted the handshake, seeing the genuine regret in the older man's eyes. She makes it easy, he said simply. Lancaster smiled faintly. She always was extraordinary like her mother. He hesitated, then added, I have a proposition for you both if you'll hear it. Catherine exchanged a glance with Travis, who nodded encouragingly. We're listening, she said. I've purchased land adjoining your property to the east, Lancaster explained. Prime grazing land with good water access. I'd like to gift it to you, no strings attached this time, I promise. Consider it a belated wedding present and an investment in my grandchild's future. Travis felt his jaw tighten at what could be construed as charity or manipulation. Mr. Lancaster. Please, Lancaster interrupted. I know money can't make up for my failures, but this is something tangible I can offer, not to buy forgiveness, but to help secure your family's future. Catherine placed her hand over Travis's. We'll consider it, she said diplomatically. But what we'd value more is simply having you in our lives, and in your grandchild's life, if you're willing to build that relationship properly this time. Lancaster's expression softened with visible relief. I'd like that very much. The reconciliation was tentative at first, but as weeks passed, Edward Lancaster proved his sincerity. He visited regularly, bringing books for Catherine and practical gifts for the ranch that showed he'd taken time to understand their needs. Travis remained cautious but acknowledged the positive change in Catherine as she healed old wounds. They did accept the land gift, but only after Travis insisted on signing a formal agreement to repay its value over time, not because Lancaster required it, but because Travis needed the arrangement to preserve his pride and independence. Lancaster understood, respecting the younger man's principles. In June, after a labor that tested Catherine's strength and Travis's nerves, they welcomed Sarah Grace Keller into the world, a robust daughter with a shock of dark hair and eyes that promised to match her mother's green ones. As Travis held his daughter for the first time, Catherine exhausted but radiant beside him, he marveled at the journey that had brought them to this moment. From solitary survival to a family bound by choice and love, from isolation to community, from fear to faith in something larger than himself. She's perfect, he whispered, placing Sarah gently in Catherine's arms. She's strong, Catherine agreed, smiling down at their daughter, like her father. Travis shook his head, throat tight with emotion. Like her mother, who taught me that true strength isn't found in standing alone, but in daring to build something worth fighting for. Catherine reached for his hand, linking their fingers as their daughter slept peacefully between them. Outside, the Montana sky stretched vast and blue above their growing ranch, promising not just survival now, but a future bright with possibility. I found my home in you, Catherine murmured, eyes shining with love. The place where I belong. Travis leaned down to kiss her gently, his heart full beyond measure. And I found everything I never knew I needed, he replied, when a brave woman with a shotgun showed me what real courage looks like. Together they had forged something neither had believed possible, a love strong enough to withstand the harshest frontier and tender enough to heal the wounds of abandonment. In finding each other they had found themselves, whole and worthy at last.